And then they were unhappy with some jokes. I think the climate changed a little bit, and they were quite concerned how the jokes could reflect on the brand, which is reasonable. I think that like a private corporation has the right to make those decisions for themselves, and then see how things go for them after that. Now, sometimes those decisions could be the wrong ones. You could maybe become too woke in your content and then end up losing money, but
no, that could never happen. Too woke? How could that possibly be? Too money? Woke for comedy? Yeah. I can't even imagine that's a thing.
No, but okay, side note, I want to get back to the special, but there is something interesting that I've learned from like being in Hollywood a little bit more now, is that like, I used to have the perception, I think we all create these perceptions where it's like, there's this like group of organized individuals that are like coming together and making decisions on like what is palatable and what isn't palatable, and then inserting those into culture in their like different fields, like Hollywood, one of them. Okay, all the movies this year are going to be about non-binary or whatever it is. And after being in it a little bit more, I think that it's way less organized and more about self-preservation. So it's like, how do I not lose my job?
Well, I worked with middle managers for a long time when I was selling personnel evaluation technology to corporations. And I did that for about 10 years, rather unsuccessfully. We found one company that used them extensively. But I learned very rapidly there that the fundamental motivation of virtually every middle manager in a corporation is, how can I not get blamed if something goes wrong?
Yes.
That's it, man. Yeah. There's no ambition. There's no desire to grow the company. There's nothing but, I don't want to stick out. If there's a mistake, I don't want it to be on me. I hope I don't get blamed for anything. I'm not going to do anything dangerous ever. And yeah. And the idea that people are organized enough to have a conspiracy is that's just so rarely the case.
But I was part of that belief a little bit, because you see it and it looks so obvious. You're like, why is every single movie the same? Every single TV show the same? Are they having the same values? But then after, like I had a moment on a show a while ago where a guy got fired, a white older man got fired because he read the N-word. Like he read the script and it had the N-word in it. And like the whole cast was kind of like, the people I spoke to on the cast, even the black people on the cast were like, yeah, I don't think it's that offensive. But the companies involved were thinking what the middleman was thinking, what you just said, which was, okay, I don't want to be responsible for this. How do I get this blame off of me? Okay, maybe if we just remove this person, it'll be a sign that we care about the people that are here and we don't want them to be offended, etc. Now, I don't believe that the guy did it out of malice. And the black people I spoke to on the cast were like, yeah, I don't think he was being malicious at all. But it was one of those things where everybody was fighting for the ability to continue working, and they didn't want to take that responsibility. And because of that, they made a very woke decision.
Yeah.
So now it made, you know what I'm saying? It made me look at the industry a little differently. Like everybody, it's like maybe the more desired the job is, the more willing the middle managers will be to be extremely liberal in their values so they don't lose that opportunity. I don't think that exists on a construction site, because the guys there are like, look, I can get a job doing drywall somewhere else, so I'm going to say whatever the fuck jokes I want to say on this construction site.
So I think too, though, there's a complicating factor there, which is it's something like this. So, each of us carries a representation of systems of ideas in our imagination, in our mind. And those ideas are active within us. That's one way of thinking about it. And nobody is a 100% repository of all woke ideas. But so there's fragments of the woke net of ideas in any given individual. But if you get 20 people who have fragments of those ideas in their head all together in a room, then you have the whole goddamn woke catastrophe operating, and then it'll look like a conspiracy. And then you can take 20 different people, each of whom have fragments of the woke nonsense in their head, and put them in a different room. They'll come up with the same decisions. There are these webs of ideas that, and in some sense, each of us acts as a neuron in a neuronal web when we're together in a group. And so then things look conspiratorial, but it's a consequence of the working out of the internal logic of systems of ideas. And so And then it might be that each individual actor is fundamentally only concerned with not being held accountable for ever making any kind of mistake, which is a hell of a way to live your life. Certainly no way to live your life if you're a comedian or a man for that matter. Maybe not even a woman, not even.
Yeah.
That should make me popular.
It was an interesting thing for me to see how it kind of manifested. And I think that there is like an opposite version of that, because now I've seen like the conservative woke pop up. Are you familiar with this?
What are you referring to?
I don't even know if I call it the conservative woke. It's a really interesting thing. I would almost call it like the counterculture brigade, which is like people who I think they were called conspiracy theorists, and now they're kind of like searching for a home. I think a lot of the support for Kanye even right now is he's just tapping into very niche beliefs, and a bunch of them at the same time that people have no representation for. And now he's the most famous person tapping into those groups, right? So he's like George Floyd really died of fentanyl. And now all the people that are anti-Black Matter, Black Lives Matter, they just hate the idea that there's anything else that killed him but his own choice to do fentanyl, are like, okay, Kanye's got it. And he also did a thing, the Jews run the banks, the Jews run all these things. So he's tapped into all these niche groups, and now he's become like their representative. But what I've noticed about these groups is that like, they're so scorned by maybe being lied to by the mainstream media or whatever it is, that their personality or identity has almost become the rejection thereof.
Yeah, well, that's always a threat that exists on the conservative side. The left-wingers always accuse the conservatives of being reactionary. And they're reactionary because they keep saying things like, you guys on the left, you're going too far. You got to slow down. You got to stop doing this. You're going too far. And that is reactionary in some sense, because they're always reacting to the excesses of the left. The conservative types tend not to want to change things. And, that can be their downfall too, because sometimes things have to change. Although intelligent conservatives sure know that. But it's hard for the conservatives to come up with a vision and to unite themselves because, well, first of all, they tend to stand for tradition, and it's not that easy to articulate traditional norms. And second, they do get reactionary, and that can turn into kind of a demented populism too, because the reactionary conservatives can go out and find the disaffected people on the right, and there's plenty of them now, and then capitalize on their resentment. I mean, Trump was pretty good at that in many ways, and continues to be so. And that's. I haven't been targeted particularly by the right, although I have to some degree years ago. When I first rose to whatever degree of notoriety I have now, a lot of the disaffected types on the right were also hoping that I'd be their guy. And same thing happened to Dan Crenshaw, the congressman, because he kind of he's got that evil right-wing supervillain appearance, if you in some sense. And they were kind of hoping he'd be their man, and he wasn't. And he actually gets targeted more by the conspiratorial right than he gets harassed by the left, which is quite the accomplishment on Crenshaw's part.